And what we're going to do is we're going to place a call in. But before I place a call in, I want to draw attention to a couple of things. And I would also like to show you a couple of things on the admin so you understand when we place the call in how this call got to me. So one thing that I would like to note is I did all of that. And Matt mentioned before, hey, this is concurrent licensing, right? Well, the other good part about this is I have been enabled for CX. That's what gave me all of these tabs, this Hub Inbox, Queues, Team Directory, and Insights. I was specifically set up as a supervisor, so that's the reason why I had insights and I had the ability to make some changes to a couple of the agents. But I'm not consuming a license yet, so I did all of that. Didn't consume a license because I haven't turned CX on. So until I log in as the user, which I will do right now, until I log in, and you'll notice when I do that, my availability counter starts on. Now, I could set myself to a custom away, which I can do. I'll set myself to a meeting, and that counter will restart there. But as of now, I am consuming a license. Before I did that, not consuming a license, and I still had visibility of what's going on in the contact center. So now I've switched to the admin. So real quickly going through the CC admin here, I'm going to search on my user. I'm not going to pick on anybody else here. I'm going to make changes to my user. So I do get some quick information here, extension number, that's CX enabled, true, right? That doesn't determine whether I'm logged in or consuming a license. It just says that I'm enabled, so I do get that additional information on my user interface. And so I'm going to go here to manage. And so the way I enabled this user for CX was I just clicked enabled. And so before that was disabled, this was turned off. And so I selected, do I want this user to be just an agent or do I want them to be a supervisor? And so in my case, I have made myself a supervisor and I get to determine what channels they see. So voice is turned on, messaging turned on, universal is turned on. If I wanted to turn one of those off, I just easily slide that over, but I'm going to turn that on. And I get to determine the number of concurrent interactions on that channel. So in this case, we said messaging 3. I could go up or down from there, but I feel like 3 is about the right number of messages I can handle concurrently. Now, the way I associate this agent with a queue is by giving them a skill that's associated with that queue. Now, I could go here and I could create one, and I could type one in and create that, as somebody's done with the beer skill here. So somebody's created a beer skill. I could go and create one. However, there's already some associated, right? So I know that the North Central has a queue already. So if I go and I type North Central, already a skill that's created, I don't have to create it. I would just select that. And then now I'm also in that North Central queue, a skill that's already created and a queue that's already created. Now notice in these, there's also the little numbers there. And I can affect those by clicking on the gear wheel. And what that is that's my skill level. So I can say 1 is the most skilled, 10 is the least skilled, and so I'm going to set this at 5. I'm somewhere in the middle. So keep this in mind, South Central skill, and I'm setting myself to a 5. And so as we go into the queues, and I'm also going to remove myself from the North Central queue, I don't want to receive their calls. So as we go to queues, keep that skill level in mind. So I'm going to click cancel here. Don't want to save those changes. Going down to queues, so I went from user to queues, and I'm going to search up South Central. In this case, I just typed South, and there's my South Central. Notice the South Central SE skill that's associated with this queue. And so I'm going to go to Manage. And here, I can see that 4 users have matched these skills. So I'm going to verify quickly that Michael H. was in here, right? Because I associated that skill that was also associated with this queue. So that basically put me in this queue. So this is the queue name, which I can edit. This is the routing type, so longest idle, ring all, top down, or pick. In this case, remember that I told you to remember the skill level. If I were ring all, what would happen is the call would come into the queue, and it would ring all of the ones unless they were busy. Then it would look at all the twos and all the threes, so on and so forth. The same is the case for the longest idle. So the longest idle, I'm at a 5. So if a call came in, it would look at the longest idle of the ones and then the twos, so on and so forth, down to me finally at 5. And if I were busy, it would continue going. That's kind of how you can cascade and really get granular on how you want to affect these calls. Obviously, if you wanted longest idle or ring all, you really wanted them to be longest idle or really wanted them to be ring all, you just set that skill level to the same number. And so everybody's on the level playing field, so it would truly be longest idle or truly be ring all. Now you can put up to 10 folks in a ring all. You could do top down, and if I do that, it does give me a little section there where I can control who's always the first ring, who's the second ring, on down to 10. I can put in a top down method where it always rings the number 1 first and then the number 2. So it gives me the ability to sort that. Now, we've already determined that I have 4 users in this South Central queue based on this being associated with the South Central skill. However, if I wanted to, I could decide to add some more folks here to this queue for the day. So I'm going to go to the CC Specialist SEs, and I'm going to click here. And so anybody that has the CC Specialist SE is going to be, if they have that skill, they're going to be added to this. And there may be nobody with that skill, so let's see if the CC Specialist has somebody in there. So there may not be anybody associated with this skill. However, let's try the North Central SEs. So anybody that has this skill would then be added and match this user group, and so this user group would be updated and all of those folks would be in there. So easy way to bring in another skill to my queue and do that quickly and easily. So I'm not going to do that at this point. And just quickly to give you an idea, there are some advanced settings that we can set here for this queue. And actually one of them has been set here. So we've enabled the wrap-up timer. So I'm just going to give myself 30 seconds after I take the call to go ahead and finish up any work. We can do service levels there, so you can measure against, hey, we want calls to be handled within 120 seconds. And so we can measure against that here. The requeue timer, so we've determined the amount of time we want this call or this interaction to stay with this agent before, maybe they got up from their desk and they forgot and before it moves on to the next agent. And so that will put them in an away state in 30 seconds and move on to the next agent. We can set a short abandon timer, unavailable destination. So if this queue, if for whatever reason, is unavailable, we need to route it to somewhere. We can place that in there, and we can even do outbound caller ID if we don't want it to be the agent's DID or the company DID. We can determine a specific caller ID and number that we owned, and for that to show up should this queue dial out. So I'm going to click cancel here. And then real quickly as the last thing before we put in a call, remember at this point I've created the agent, given them a skill, that skill associated them with this queue. So I've got my agent, I've got my queue. How am I going to get the call to this queue? In this case I'm saying call, but it could be any interaction. And in fact, when I go to routes, notice that we have ones here for calling, we have one here for messaging, and then one here for universal. These all look the same. In this case, I'm going to work with calling, but just know that whether you're in messaging or universal, these are all the same. We've segmented these in 4 different segments. And so inbound is anything that happens before it gets to the queue. So how do I want to bring this caller in? How do I want to bring this interaction in? Do I want to dip in the Salesforce, recognize who the caller is, based on either their incoming caller ID or maybe some information that I've asked them, like a customer number or a VIP code, and do the routing based on that? Or do I want to set up a press 1 for sales, press 2 for support type menu and do that routing based on that? All of that would be here in the inbound route. Now, once it gets in the queue, so now that they've pressed 2 for support and they're sitting in that support queue, what do I want to have happen? This is where I can set up the routes for what happens once it's in the queue. Do I want to give them specific messaging on hold. What music on hold do I want them to hear? Do I want to, after maybe 2 minutes, offer them a call back within this queue, and we'll hold their place in line and call them back? That can be done in the queue. What happens when the agent accepts? So now they're sitting in the support queue, have been there for a minute and a half, and then the agent becomes available. He accepts that. What do I want to have happen when that occurs? That can be done here. Or what happens when the agent is completed with the interaction? Do I want to send them a post-call survey or transfer them to a post-call survey, or do I want to send them maybe an SMS text that says, hey, thanks for being a customer and using our services? All of that can be accomplished here. Real quickly, I'm just going to pick on the North Central call routing here, the inbound route, so you can see quickly what this looks like. And so, of course, calls come in. They start somewhere, right? They come in here. We're going to check business hours. So all of these components have been added: greeting, dial menu. If you notice, as I hover over any open space, I'm able to see a plus. And so all these components have been added this way, right? So we've just clicked there, and we've been able to add. Notice there's one for integrations here. So in this case, we're going to listen to a Salesforce integration, but I was able to add this by clicking on these Salesforce components here to be able to add these. If I really just wanted to add a greeting here, I would click there, and in fact, I'll click there and show you what this greeting actually looks like. And so it's added the greeting here, and when I click on this, I'm able to affect this greeting by using either an existing greeting, uploading from a file, recording one, or in this case, we've done text-to-speech, and we have a number of different languages, dialects, male and female, from which to choose here. So, do have a lot of variety here. So a lot of even Spanish, English, Portuguese, Japanese, Italian that you can choose from here. And so I'm going to click cancel because I don't actually want to change these. At the bottom, you might have noticed there are some variables that I can input. Each of these components along the way provides variables because we know certain information. So the first one was the incoming call, right? Well, based on the incoming call, if you get caller ID, you know the caller name, you know the caller number, you know the dialed number. These are all variables that I can use later all throughout this workflow. And so each one of these, I could maybe do something based on the calendar or do something based on the greeting that we have later. Each one of these has variables that I can easily use by selecting them here and choosing those variables and be able to add those into the greetings. So I am going to delete that. Now, real quickly, just to show you what this looks like, and right before I place the call, I'm going down to option 8. So when I call in, I will be using option 8, and I'm going to get a dial menu there where I'm going to input a case number. It's going to confirm that case number and then make some decisions based on that. Here's where I'm querying Salesforce. So one of the options there I selected this component was query Salesforce. I basically just have, because we already have the existing integration with Salesforce, these are just field names out of Salesforce that I've been able to add here, and then we've been able to set the variables and do different things based on this variable. So you will hear some self-service as this person calls in and goes through this queue, and then lastly, I will take that call. So I'm going to close this, go back to Mitel 1. I am in CX. I'm in a meeting, but let's place this call in, and I'm going to let you hear what this sounds like from the caller's perspective. Put it on speaker here.
Thank you for contacting the South Central Sales Engineering 1 CX demo. Press 1 for all FDs. Press 2 for demo.
Hit option 8.
Press 1 if this is an existing case.
It is an existing case.
Please enter your case number.
I'm going to enter my case number. Right now it's
you have entered 1002.
dipping into Salesforce and checking that.
If you would like to re-enter the case.
It's going to recognize me.
Philip has low